Am I sharing my screen now?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, let's give people an extra minute. And I thought I'd start with some promotion. Okay, it's 11:15 and we are quite a few people here already. A few more people may pick up along the way, I guess. So let's just get started. And first of all, as I said, a bit of promotion. Our special issue of AI Magazine, Wiley's AI Magazine, just got out with 6 interesting articles about AI and the news, which should interest people in this group, I think. So I'm scrolling down now to the contents. You see there are 2 papers from practitioners or practitioner groups. David Caswell, who we know and who have talked here before, as I can recall, discussing his work about on structured news and language models with experiences from BBC. There's also a paper by Edgar May's group at Bloomberg, who has done lots of work on financial large language models and AI-assisted journalism in their organization. Then there is paper from the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. That's Neil Thurman's group, discussing local journalism and the various possibilities and activities going on in that area. There's a paper about news recommendation, a little more research oriented about the need for doing more in the field type evaluations of the effects of transparency and control in news recommendation by another group from the Netherlands. I think they are from Maastricht. And there's a paper from the Open University, Enrico's colleagues, discussing automated correction of misinformation in social media. And finally, there is a paper about the business of news in the AI economy by Helle Sjövåg, which we know. So I think actually some of these people have been here already and made presentations, and other authors, I think, are people we can consider inviting for seminars later. So I have co-edited this along with Nick Diakopoulos, who you know and who's already been presenting here, and also Natalie Hellberger, which I guess Reshmi know from the University of Amsterdam, and who is also a very interesting person, I think, to invite for a talk. Some of these talks leaning a little towards the journalism side, so they could maybe also be joint talks with a journalism group. So this is open access, and at least through UIB's library, everyone should have access. I think actually everyone anywhere has got access. So please have a look at it. I think there should be articles here that are very interesting for some of them should at least be very interesting for all of you. Okay, so today's speech is by Dr. Reshmi Pillai, who we are very glad to have here. Hello, Reshmi. She is a postdoctoral researcher at the Vrije University in Amsterdam in the Department of Communication Science. And it seems that a lot of your research background, Reshmi, is related to language modeling and social media, for example, tweets. Currently, you're working on a consortium project towards responsible AI for local journalism, where I also see that University of Stavanger is involved. So that is interesting. Yeah. You it was Lawrence, who are also here, who tipped us about you. And Lawrence, who we have been collaborating with for several years in the Nordis project. So we're really looking forward to hearing more about your activity, which I think has got a lot of overlap with stuff we are interested in, and maybe stuff we are actually doing or planning to do. So the title of your talk is AI Solutions for Local Journalism Challenges, a Design Thinking Approach and Beyond. Okay, so please, Reshmi, we have kind of 45 minutes for the whole meeting. So anything from 30 to anything around 30 minutes is fine, or a little less if you want more time for discussion. So we have until 12 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Andreas, and special thanks to also pronouncing my my full name correctly. Very few people get it right. So. Yeah, so I suppose I can share the screen. Give me just a minute while I do share it. Yeah. Yeah, so can everyone see the slides? Is it good? Okay, that's great. Yes. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining today. I've been really looking forward to this talk. So as Andrea said, the title is AI Solutions for Local Journalism Challenges, a Design Thinking Approach. And I'm Reshmi, as Andreas introduced. So I'm part of so the work that I'm talking about in this seminar it's part of a consortium project. It's titled Towards Responsible AI for Local Journalism. So what you see in the slide are my colleagues from the Netherlands, but the consortium also has teams in the LMU Munich and also in Norway, University of Stavanger. So I also see a lot of my colleagues from LMU and Norway in the author list in the AI magazine that you just shared. So my colleagues from the Netherlands who were involved in the design who were more directly involved in the design thinking process that we are going to see in a few slides. So they are here. It's Walter van Atveld from the same department as me, Vrije University Amsterdam, and Anske from Vrije University. Yael has got more of a journalism background, and Natalie Helberger, of course. And we have two postdocs in the Netherlands, me and Teresa. She's more from a legal background, and she's from the University of Amsterdam. She works with Natalie. And yeah, and of course, we have our colleagues in Norway and Munich. Yeah, so the research team is, it has a very multidisciplinary background, which drives the overall theme of the project, the objectives of the project. Yeah, so the first question in our discussion will be, why specifically local journalism? Why not focus on national or other scope of journalism? So the key benefit of local journalism is that it's very instrumental in building community engagement, making the challenges and the issues of local communities heard in news discussions. And it also strengthens the democratic process. At the same time, local journalism especially have been facing the challenges of declining revenues and the the decline in local journalism also means that, at least in the US, there have been reports of news deserts forming and widening, where we don't. So there is a lack of local representation in news discussions. So local journalism is quite essential in maintaining maintaining democracy. And we also talk a lot about AI and journalism in general. We have seen that there is a lot of AI-driven tools which can assist in journalistic tasks. At the same time, there has also been a lot of criticism or discussions about being cautious in applying AI in journalism. Of course, there is a lot of ethical debates, ethical questions about AI applications. At the same time, there is also a question about how do bias in AI or large language models specifically, so they also get transferred to their applications in journalism. So these are all questions, and there is a lot of discussions about how do we find the balance between the pros and cons of AI in journalism. So this is the background that we come from. So specifically, there is a lot of questions being raised about how is AI going to change or even steal my job as a journalist? But the question should be rather, how can I use AI as a journalist to enhance my work? So in the AI applications that, so the discussions in that we started or we facilitated as part of our project, we take care to have the journalist at the center of the discussion. So it's the second question rather than the first. So it's about how do it's about giving or maintaining the agency of decisions with the journalists themselves. So for this purpose, we adopted a design thinking process. The objective being identifying specific challenging areas in newsrooms where AI can benefit the most. So AI, of course, has its limitations, and there is a lot of challenges where AI is definitely not the solutions. So we didn't really want to start with an AI solutions and then push it on for adoption in local newsrooms. So we are thinking the other way around. Let's put AI out of the room for a minute, and then just let's talk about the newsrooms, the editorial process there, and what are the challenges, and then try to see if at all AI will be beneficial in that context. So for that purpose, we did design thinking sprints with a design thinking expert in the Netherlands. Similar works have been done with my colleagues, led by my colleagues in Munich. But in this discussion, we are focusing on the design thinking sprints done in the Netherlands with a regional news media partner. So we start with the empathizing stage, where we try to understand the editorial process more, especially. I don't come from a journalistic background, so it's very critical that us being a very multidisciplinary team, we all have to, some of us do have a background in journalism research, but some of us don't. So it's very key to understand the editorial process first. So that's what we do in the empathizing phase, and also give a platform for journalists to reflect about their day-to-day works and what are the challenges that they individually and collectively face in their process. And in the second sprint, we try to bring more clarity to those challenges and formulate them as specific questions. And some of the challenges identified in empathized stage, some of them were dropped. in the defined stage, and they were refined. And in the next stage, that was the ideation phase, where we really focused on two problems defined in the earlier step. And we try to, we as in the journalists try to envision how an ideal solution should look like. What should they have in the ideal solution? And now we are in the prototyping phase. So I, as someone who has a background in AI and natural language processing, to be specific, I try to look at the solution approaches identified by put forward by the journalists in the ideation phase, and then I try to develop a prototype which, to a certain degree, addresses those problems. So that's what we are, and the next step is to test it, ideally involving also the journalists in the same regional news media that that we were involved in the other sprint stages. So a quick look at closely at the empathizing and the define and ideation phases, and then we will also briefly discuss about or talk about the outcomes. So the empathizing phase, we had the design sprint with the journalists, and we tried to map the editorial process with actions, emotions, and pain points. We also had one-to-one interviews with journalists, editors, and technologists from the same news media, the purpose being to understand the work activities more closely. We also did some newsroom observations, and we basically observed what are the ongoing activities in a typical day in a newsroom. What were the outcomes from this? So from these different steps, we could collect and formulate specific challenge areas, such as managing sources and contact, style guides, generating ideas, social media, content, and diversity and inclusion. So there were specific challenges which were identified in multiple steps during this phase, and we could collect it like this. And in the next phase, that's a define, the define sprint, we also had a similar workshop with the journalists, and we tried to refine the challenges a little bit, something like this. So now we reach at questions. So for each of the, so some of the challenges, they were refined or they were dropped or they were reworded with further discussions with journalists. But then these were the questions that we had. For example, generating ideas, the key question was identified as, how do we get interesting background information and ideas from different sources? So we basically we reached questions, and then we also chose two specific questions from this. And then we moved on to the ideation phase, where, so this, what you see on the screen is it's a storyboard which was created by the journalists. So there were two storyboards which were created by the journalists, and the first one was about a journalist getting background information and news angle suggestions from about a news story. So he has a lot of information sources. So the system automatically identified background information and news angles. So that was one storyboard built by the journalists. And the second one was a style guide and creating stories which are beneficial in getting engagement. So we pursued both of them, both of these ideas put forward by the journalists. So for the second thought about creating engaging content. So we did this experiment that we had a data set. We had collected a data set of 300,000 plus tweets from regional news media and 200,000 plus tweets from national news media. Sorry for the typo there. And so these were collected from the top 5 regional and national Dutch newspapers, and in terms of number of Twitter followers, and the time period was this. So this data set we had collected prior to the design thinking process, but we also show that so that the data set is really beneficial for an analysis like this. I mean, especially now that we don't have much access to tweets anyway. So the research questions that we explored further with this data set are how do tweets which received high and low engagement and by regional and Dutch news media differ in terms of topics discussed and different terms of how do tweets by national and regional Dutch media differ in terms of engagement received or text-based features, etc. So these are our research questions. So basically, it's an analysis along different axes. So on one end, we have tweets from national and regional news media. We have tweets which got high engagement and low engagement. So it's a study about how do tweets belonging to these different axes differ from, or do they differ from each other? That's a question that we explore. We do see some difference. For example, high and low engagement in national and regional media, they do differ. At the same time, we see something like, for example, education. It's a topic that occur in national media very often in both high engagement and low engagement corpus. So one difference that we observed is that in those cases, even if the tweets could belong to both high engagement or low engagement, there were tweets belonging to high engagement and low engagement corpus, but at the same time, they differ in terms of other features, just text-based features that we are going to look at later. So we see that overall it goes along with our intuitive understanding about what could be interesting for a regional news audience and what could be beneficial for a national news audience. And then we also look at the engagement. So we do see that engagement, even after being adjusted to the number of Twitter followers, we do see that it's still statistically significantly higher for national news compared to regional news. For the other text-based features, it's a little bit of mix. So we do see that, for example, anger and fear, they have a statistically significantly higher presence in national tweets compared to regional news. So we'd also see some other difference in the text-based features. And so now we bring also the engagement into ideas, so into the consideration. And when we look at both the axes, we see that for national newspapers, for example, the high engagement tweets, they had lower number of word types and higher number of question words and characters per word. Regional newspapers, on the other hand, the higher engagement tweets had higher number of word types and higher number of pronouns or characters per word. No statistically significant difference was found by other features. But the question is, where do these findings lead us? The need for, so we see that what works to get higher engagement in national news, it's not the same in regional news. So the need for distinguishing the scope of the newspapers and the engagement, the studies on the engagement that they receive. The generative tools which generate engaging headlines, they could benefit from these type of research findings to suggest social media headlines, specific textiles, which can potentially improve engagement. So this is the study which resulted from an extension of the ideas proposed by the journalists. As we said, there was another storyboard proposed by the journalists. And so rather than news angles, we tried to focus on building something like a structured new knowledge representation from existing news information, like existing past news reports about the region, wiki pages from the regions, etc. So this is the overall picture that how we extend this idea. So let's say that there is an incoming news story and there is a journalist, and he's thinking, what is some relevant background information about this news story? And then, so this news story goes into this system, which is a structured knowledge representation, and it's able to put forward some potential background information which can be interesting for the journalist. So this is the overall picture. How do we implement this? It's a retrieval augmented generation RAG-based system for providing background information for the journalist about a given news event. How does it work? A knowledge graph is created using a large language model using from text data. So this background text data, it can be wiki pages or news reports about this region or other text information. So we have this the graph in place. And then the journalist provides the incoming news item. So the journalist hear that so this person has been elected as a new prime minister of the Netherlands. For this news, he or she, they want to know some background information. So maybe there is nothing interesting from a regional perspective about this news event. That's also an outcome. But there could be, in most cases, there could be interesting background information which are specific to this region and which are relevant in the context of this incoming news story. So the graph RAG, it identifies, or the graph-based RAG system, it identifies entities in the news system, news item, and retrieves information about it. And in the next step, the retrieved information, it's rendered into a text format which is easy for the journalist to understand. It's presented to the journalist. So this is the architecture of the prototype. The challenges that we see is, so there is a lot of options for different large language models to extract the structured knowledge representation to build this. So which LLMs to use, and how do we evaluate the retrieved information? So we say that RAG-based evaluation is a really, really recent research area. So there are some existing frameworks, of course. For example, RAGAS, it's commonly used, and it's also performing well. There is SEMScore and ARIES. But some of these evaluation frameworks need human annotations, albeit a small amount. But so in our specific context, we are also talking about, so we are evaluating the background information generated by an automated system. And so ideally, we should have journalists in the loop, but we are talking about journalists who are already working in resource-constrained organizations, just regional newsrooms. So there is a lot of challenges in getting their inputs. So, and we also we cannot simply plug in the performance metrics mentioned in these frameworks. We have to define and implement also performance metrics, which is really specific which is really specific and relevant to this task. For example, what we are trying to evaluate the RAG system is based on the faithfulness. For example, can the generated background information be inferred from the context information? So the information behind this structured knowledge representation is, in our prototype, we are building this using previous news reports in the last 10 years, for example, about this region. So can this background information be inferred truthfully from this news report? So is it faithful? Entity coverage. So let's say that the incoming news item has 5 different entities mentioned in it. So do the background information just focuses on one of them and ignores the rest? So that's probably not what the journalist wants. So all entities are all entities in the incoming news story covered in the generated background information. Novelty. So the background information should not be just it shouldn't be a rehash of the news story. There has to be new information which will be helpful for the journalist to pursue new leads. So we intend to include these different evaluation metrics which are specific to the task. What are the key takeaways? So we are at the end. I believe we are still on time. We have exactly 15 minutes, I guess. Just a quick minute to talk about the key takeaways. So what we learned from the design thinking sprints is that we had participants who are actually working on writing the news. We also had participants from the management side. So sometimes we need to involve the participants from different domains because they, of course, bring different perspectives. So firstly, it needs to be a bottom-up approach in identifying key challenges. So let's not start from the AI solutions and then push it on to the newsrooms. In our experience, what works is starting from the bottom up, as in understand the editorial process and then talk about challenges and then see if our AI expertise will be beneficial there. Secondly, also to involve, as I said, participants from different domains within this news organizations. A very good thing to remember here will be that local national news media, they address different audience. They need, in most cases, different AI solution approaches. Finally, evaluation of these AI solutions are tricky. And in our case, we are adopting LLM judges, but that may not be a solution, but that could be a potential area to explore. But yeah, so we do believe that evaluation of these journalistic knowledge or AI solutions or frameworks that we develop as experts in the field, they do need some more closer inspection in terms of how do we evaluate them? How do we make sure that this is useful? So yeah, so that's all the presentation is about. But then I'm keenly looking forward to the questions. But firstly, thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Okay, thanks a lot, Reshmi.
Thank you.
For a very interesting presentation. I am sure there must be questions here. This touches on a lot of stuff we have already been working on in Bergen. I do not see any hands, so I guess I can start a little. I mean, we are of course very interested in one of your projects that you went into a little more detail in. I don't remember what you called it, but the idea of course lifting news-related text into knowledge graphs and using graph rag to enrich the background information and present it to the journalist. You did not say so much about angles there, because I think part of the anticipated outcome was that you would also suggest angles. Can you say a little more about what you have done on the angle side here, or is this kind of still future work?
Sure. So yeah, that's a good point, Andrea. So at the start when we were discussing about when this area came from the journalists, so they did talk about both background information and also getting news angles. So we tried. So when we thought more about as a solution approach, we also saw that the key question is here to first build a structured knowledge representation. So the key challenge there was that the journalists do not have a lack of information. On the other hand, it's more of a question of having too much information, but then not really being able to retrieve it when a new news item comes in. So then we decided to focus more on really actually building the structured knowledge representation. And then retrieving the background information comes more as an application of this representation. And then potentially, so this will be the first iteration of what we are doing. And then we intend to explore news angles as a second application, so to see, of the structured knowledge representation. So we also did a little bit of angles. So within the specific regional news media that we are collaborating with, they have some specific focal groups so we intend to develop the news angles in more closer collaboration with the focal groups, identifying which news angles work for which focal group. So that's part of our next iteration.
Okay, yes, thanks. I mean, part of the difference here is that you, of course, have manual stand-up meetings to decide on what are the interesting topics here. So,
sure.
So
yeah, that's the idea.
That explains a little of the difference. Now I have first Vinay and then Sergey. Please, Vinay.
Yeah, thank you, Reshmi, for an interesting talk.
Thanks, Vinay.
Yeah, I'm also from University of Stavanger, but not involved in this project. I know Helle Schuag is involved in this project.
She is, yeah.
So my question is, have you thought about how to evaluate this RAG pipeline that you described, the effectiveness of that pipeline?
Sure. So, so that's something which we identified as a key challenge there, because we also see that journalists are really busy, and they are also working on very close deadlines, and especially in regional news media, the availability and the resources, it's also a bit more difficult to get than news media organizations of a larger scope. So these are the evaluation metrics. So we also identified that we went through the existing RAG evaluation metrics. So as I said, it's also a bit new. So there is a lot of ongoing debate about what exactly will be some good performance metrics, which really represents the performance of a RAG system. But in our case, what we propose is that it also depends on that specific application. And what we're trying to do is that while we are inspired from RAGAs or other existing frameworks, we really want to define and evaluate the RAG system based on metrics which are specific to this task. So that's why we have something like this here. For example, the background information should ideally cover all the entities that the news story is about. At the same time, it should add a lot of new information. So there is a little bit of a contradicting metrics there, values there, that we have to quantify them. So at the moment we are evaluating them using LLM judges, and we are defining prompts with a few shots about what could be a good novelty or faithfulness. But then Yeah, so these performance metrics are rather handcrafted for this application, for this specific task. Do I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, Sergey. We don't hear you yet.
Yeah.
We still don't hear you.
Test.
Yes.
Input.
Good.
You cannot hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay, now I can hear me. Okay, this is very strange, but yeah, thanks, Reshmi, for the very interesting talk. I would have two questions. One, I hope is very easy to answer. Here I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about the data that you use for the statistical analysis. So as I remember, it was something like 300,000 tweets for national and then 2,000 tweets for
That's
regional.
right. It's an approximate number. Yeah.
And how was the data distributed across the topics? Because especially when you showed us the results that education was important for some, but not for others, I was wondering if it's maybe like an underrepresented topic that could cause some statistical anomalies. Can you comment on this a bit?
We haven't really looked at that, but so this tweets were actually they were extracted from Twitter some time ago, before the Twitter data collection was really this hard, and so the time period ran for 3 years, and we didn't really filter the tweets at that time for any keywords. The only criteria was that all the tweets from a specific regional and national Dutch news media organizations, which were the top 5 based on the number of Twitter followers. So potentially the most popular national and regional news media. So they had, so we didn't really focus on the topics in terms of at the time of tweets extraction. So when we look at the tweets, so our purpose was to really see what are the topics which actually occur in the high engagement corpus and the low engagement corpus in both these data sets.
So what does it mean then, high engagement? Would it be like a total number of engagement or engagement percentual per topic?
No, so the topic is not considered while defining engagement. So the engagement here simply means the absolute sum of all the engagement activities, as in likes, retweets, shares, and quotes. But the absolute sum was divided by the number of followers to make up for the fact that the media with the higher number of followers might have more engagement. So we wanted to control for that fact. So that's why, so that was taken into account. Yeah, but otherwise it was an absolute sum. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, that explains it very well. Thank you. And then, so, you know, I'm coming from the industry and I'm looking for some concrete takeaways that we can apply. So when I look at the slide where you kind of showed what are the main metrics for better engagements, like it was low number of word types, you know, what are some concrete ideas I can try to implement to help journalists?
Yeah, I think that's a bit tricky to answer. So, the key takeaway, I would say that there has been a lot of works done in news engagement, even in tweets, but none of them actually consider a differentiation between national and regional news tweets. Tweets are, even in the online news headlines. So one key takeaway is that I would say in the light of these experiments will be that so what we find is what works for, so the national newspapers and regional newspapers, different things work, different textual features work. So it would be wise to distinguish between the scope of the newspaper when we consider the influential factors of engagement. So what works for a newspaper of national scope might not work for a regional news. So any automated suggestions for tweaking your headlines for a better engagement should be based on the data from your own audience. So it's we don't see it really transferable between different news media.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we are really on time, but Bjørnar has his hand up. So, and I think this is an interesting discussion. So please, Bjørnar, we can go a few minutes over time, I think.
So I'd like to address the ideation phase a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the output from there was two different ideas, I would say. Did you ever work with some ideas or reflect on ideas where the news consumer was included somewhere in the process?
Yeah. So that's a very good thought. So the short answer is no. So the news consumers or the audience was not really part of this this design sprint, but what we intend to do is, for example, in this and this ideas. So after the prototype phase, when we test it out, we believe that it would be good to involve also people from the audience. But then the tricky part is to have a representative sample of the news audience. So the regional news media that we are already working with, they already have a very good understanding about what are some specific audience group with specific demographic features and specific expectations from the regional news media. So this might be a helpful information for us to define, for us to ensure that the news audience are that we consider in our experiments are truly representative.
Yeah, it could be about user adaptation of the news.
Yeah,
or something like that.
But the short answer is that no, we haven't involved them in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we are a little over time, and I see no more hands. So. Thanks again, Reshmi. I think this has been a very interesting presentation and session. So I hope we will stay in touch, and there is obviously a lot of overlap with work we are doing in Work Package 3 and other activities here also outside Media Futures. And also I see there's a big overlap. I mean, we are collaborating already with the same and working together with the same people. So it would be really good, of course, just to stay in contact, but also try to look for joint project possibilities in the near and medium future. So thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks to everyone for showing up. And Fasle, you have not come up with any, or Bjørnar, and not anything final we should Work Package 3 matters we should mention?
No, we can just conclude and wish you good luck for the summer holidays.
Good luck to you all, and thanks again to Reshmi. See you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay.